Hi, folks. Steve Urban here from the Riderflex Podcast. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by two companies I'm deeply involved with. First up, Reliance, your trusted partner for nationwide robot maintenance and repair, specializing in humanoid and autonomous robots for homes and businesses. Visit roboreliance.com to learn more. And for all your home maintenance needs, there's Cura Home Maintenance of Colorado. From air duct cleaning to dryer vent cleaning to gutter cleanouts and much more. Check them out at curahomeservices.com. And finally, don't forget about the two books we've published in the Riderflex Guide series. The first being the Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring. This one is targeted at all types of managers and supervisors, anybody that interviews and hires people. And the second one, the Riderflex Guide 2.0, Mastering Job Interviews, designated to help all levels of job candidates prepare for and ace the interview. And now for today's episode. Please subscribe and enjoy. Colby Tunick on the Riderflex Podcast. Hello, Colby.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for having me. How you doing?
You're in San Diego?
I'm in San Diego.
It's the only area, I guess I'll call it, in California that I'm fond of, like the southern, I don't know, third. I don't know, however you want to describe it, but let's call it San Clemente and South, something like that. I'm a
Beautiful
fan.
part of the world.
I'm a fan.
Yep.
Now let's see. Wait a minute. San Clemente, is that north? No, no. Let's call it Laguna Beach and South.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
Orange County on South.
Yeah. I'll take it. Any of that in there is good with me.
It's always nice coming home.
Are you from there, or where'd you grow up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I grew up in Los Angeles, moved down here, and I've been here almost a decade. The joke is there's very few people from San Diego originally. Most people are transplants, but I know a few. They do exist.
So from LA originally, you said. Okay. You went to high school where?
I went to high school in Santa Clarita.
All right. And what'd your folks do?
Both of my parents were social workers.
That explains a lot of the things on your LinkedIn profile.
Public service was big, was big for us.
I gotcha. All right. Are they still with us?
They're still here.
Retired or still working?
Still working.
All right. But no entrepreneurial stuff from either one of them. Like they didn't start their own thing, or did they?
No, they didn't. There's been a few people in my family, some aunts, some uncles that have started their own thing, but nothing direct to me.
Okay. And how about siblings? What, are you the only kid, or what's going on with the family? Give me the rest of it.
Well, I have two siblings, two younger siblings. I'm the eldest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you a good kid, Colby, or were you a rebel? Were you where were you? Were you like going at mass every night, or were you at partying, or what were you doing, Colby? Come on.
I don't recollect being super difficult. I think I was not necessarily interested in the thing other kids were. I really liked reading from a young age. I was
Okay.
a little bit more insular. Always liked outdoors. Didn't always go with the flow. Looked at things differently than everybody else.
Okay.
Maybe
All
that
right.
caused some heartache back then, but hey.
So you don't have any good stories? Like you're not going to share with us that you were arrested or you spent some time in jail or anything cool?
Not yet, but if you and I get together after this, I'm sure we can make it happen.
Okay, so you went to San Diego State, which is, I guess, how you got south in the first place, roughly.
It is what brought me to the border. Yeah.
Okay, and what were you going to do with this international security conflict resolution? What were you going to do with all this stuff? This major?
Yeah. So I was working on joining the Foreign Service in the State Department.
Okay.
Ended up out of college working for an international consultant working on defense projects around the world and kind of
Cool.
ended up moving from public service into more business. And then, yeah, it was an interesting transition.
But what was the plan? What did you really want to do? Was there a goal there early on?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a diplomat in Asia specifically. So I studied Mandarin in school. I got an internship at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing.
Ah,
Um, yeah, San Diego State is one of two four-year universities in the U.S. that has a degree focused on security and conflict resolution. It's kind of funny when you put those side by side, but they're quite related.
okay. What happened? Why'd you stop the whole diplomat path?
Uh, Partially because it takes a long time in government, and out of school I was looking. So in school I had been worked for a congressman down here. At the time, it was the California 52nd district. I think now it's the California 53rd district because the census they reapportioned.
Okay.
So I always knew I was interested in it, but just ended up, needing a job out of school, right? You got debt, you need to work. Ramen only goes so far, right, Steve?
Okay. So then what were you thinking? Because I see this project manager, child care and development division. Were you thinking, okay, now I'm going to head towards where my kind of my parents' path, or what were you thinking there?
Yeah, so actually in there is before that, I was working as a as a defense consultant. Then I ended up working at a startup in the space industry. Um, needed a change, needed to make some money. So I went and I got a job in project management at a California insurance company. And it was while I was there, we started the entrepreneurial journey. But with any good entrepreneurial journey, sometimes it takes a while to get going. So I also did a
Mhm.
stint after that with the Department of Social Services, and really just further refined my project management skills while the startup was, you know, startuping.
I
And here we
see.
are.
I
Yeah.
see. What was the insurance company? What was the insurance piece? Were we working?
Yeah, it's called the California Earthquake Authority.
I see. Okay. So that's the insurance tie into your whole startup.
Yes, it is.
How did you talk to me about this thought process? While you were there, were you like, okay, I see a need, I'm going to do my own thing? Talk to me. How did that all develop?
Yeah. So I think insurance is interesting because it's an industry that makes a lot of money, but it's still not very modern. It's very much a legacy business, and there's a lot of very valid reasons for it. Uh, it hasn't gone through wholesale transformation like the finance industry or telecommunications or banking or other things like that. So while I was there, I noticed that there was an issue with just data, right? The organization had a ton of data, but it was very difficult to use it and use it to drive business decisions. And so while I was there was when me and a couple of friends at the time said, why don't we take this on ourselves and see if we can make something out of this? And that ultimately is what led to the current company, ReFocus AI.
What was wrong with the data? Was it like not to get too technical, I don't want to lose the audience, but what was wrong with it?
Yeah, and I think sometimes we look at it like what's wrong with it. It was less what was wrong with it, but there was an ability to use it,
Okay.
right? And so, specifically, this organization had 20 plus years of policyholder data. We would go to make a policy change, right? And it's a regulated industry. So not only did you have to get the board of the company to approve, but you also had to get the state regulator of insurance to approve. And people would ask questions like, how is changing the price or changing this coverage option going to change retention or help with adoption of the product? And it was very difficult to come up with those answers concretely, even though we had the data. And so that's what I mean. It wasn't a data problem per se, it was our inability to use that data to make business decisions, which is where we saw an opportunity with this company to be that sort of applied analytics platform and connect the data to a business outcome that needs to be solved.
Mm. All right. So you're seeing a need. Now, during this time, were you sharpening your functional skills as what? As a project manager, as an operations guy, as an analyst? Like, what were you headed towards functionally as your specialty at that point?
Yeah. So before I joined, that insurance company, I was leading business development for a space technology company out of San Diego that was being
Okay.
incubated at UCSD.
Okay.
So my background was actually sales. I'd been in sales since I was 16 and a half,
Hmm.
working at tons of companies, hardline sales at Sears and Roebucks back in the day. No longer, it's weird to say it no longer exists, right? People
Right.
10
It
years
is.
from now will be like,
It is
what's
weird.
Sears, right? A bunch of other companies too, where I was sort of the lead salesperson or the most successful salesperson. I had the best metrics.
Okay.
Um, what that turned into though was organizational change management and project management. So while I was at the insurance company, I was in the project management office. I ended up getting my project management professional designation or PMP. And so really it was that combination of sales, but then organizational leadership plus specifically how do you do change, right? And I think that's what project management specializes in. It's something that seems easy on the face, but anyone who's listening that's ever tried to change something for something else, change your cell phone provider, for instance, right? You know how complicated it can be, but imagine doing that in an organization with billions of dollars and hundreds, if not thousands of employees, right? And so that's what I was honing at the time at the insurance company.
Gotcha. Most people that are successful at sales are usually not the most organized individuals. So that's a nice skill set to have, or combination there, nice combo. If you're, I've always said this, as a recruiter for a living and a lifelong executive, if you're operationally minded, you have operational traits, so to speak, planning, organization, and so forth, and you're detail oriented, and you can close deals and manage relationships. Whew, man, that's a strong candidate right there. You don't find very many of those.
I will say it's always easier though selling someone else's product. When it's your company and it's your technology, sometimes it's hard moving beyond your love of what you've built, right? So
Mm,
that was a personal challenge for me. I've always found it's much easier to sell someone else's product where,
mm.
I maybe don't have as it's not my baby, right? Or it's not your baby. It's a product that needs to be sold. It provides good or a positive change in the marketplace.
Yeah,
So that's sort of an interesting learning.
yeah. So you're there. You're seeing this data problem. You and your friends are like, "Hey, man, let's do something else." Are there co-founders? Was it just you, or what's the setup now?
Yeah. So at the time, I started the company with two friends. One was a technical person. The other one was sales and marketing, and I was more operations.
All right.
We ended up going through a change where both of those people stepped away from the company about a year and a half, 2 years in,
Okay.
which was really difficult for me. And then we brought on my current co-founder, Dr. Nassar Handawal, who has a PhD in AI. And so now it's been him and I building the company, and we're a team of 12 as of today. We just onboarded a new employee, and we should be 13 next week.
Very good. Good for you, my friend. Now, for the listeners, this will be great tip for the listeners, especially the aspiring entrepreneurs or anybody going through this problem. Disconnecting early co-founders can be messy and challenging. So I'm sure there's a lot of details you can't share, but what advice, we could probably do a whole show just on this one topic, but what advice would you want to give to the listeners as it relates to the initial setup of the co-founders in the agreement? Because I'm just going to guess you wish you'd have done a few things differently with the operating agreement and cap table. And then, so what would you have done differently with the setup? And then when you needed to disconnect it, what advice would you give? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think it's always hard when you try and start a company with friends, right? And I think for most people who are interested in starting a business, for good or for bad, it's going to be with people you know and have that pre-existing relationship. Um, I think that there's a truism that you probably agree with, Steve, which is, hire fast and fire faster, right? I think that has to also apply to friends that are trying to build a business together for a couple of different reasons, right? I think the reason it didn't work out with my two other co-founders was one, we were all trying to do different things, or we all had different places we were trying to go, right? Some of them wanted a full-time salary within 6 months. Some of them wanted, a resume builder. I was looking at trying to build like an entity that we could sell. I think it's also just like a values alignment issue, right? Like even if you're friends for a reason, but that doesn't mean you necessarily align on the reason you're trying to build a company or the values that those companies aspire to have. So setting all of those up front are really important. Well, we did well, and I'll talk about what we didn't do well. We used a platform called Clerky, CLERKY.com, which made incorporation super easy, and it set all the legal documents and cap table management, and for a very low price without needing a lawyer. We now have a professional law firm that we worked with, and they have said that the companies that we work with, like a big international law firm, by the way. It's not just your local wills attorney. They've said that for all the startups that they've had that have gone through this company for incorporation versus the ones who haven't, it's been much less cleanup, and it's been a much more seamless experience.
That's cool.
So yeah, so that really helped us. Like, we had a proper cap table, we had bylaws, we had
Good for you.
we properly incorporated. What we didn't do well as a team of people was really set, like, what did we want our outcomes to be 3, 6, 9 months, right? What were our individual roles and responsibilities? So now when I onboard somebody, or before I even put together a job posting, I put together the description, the duty statement, if you will, coming from government and big corporations. That's what they're called. But like, this is what you're going to do every day. This is how you're going to be measured, right? And then we're going to sign it on your first day together. I wish I'd had those for myself and my co-founders, because it would have been much easier for me to go back when things weren't working out and identify the areas I was unhappy with.
Yep. Did you have to write checks on their way out?
So we did have to reimburse them for unvested equity.
Interesting.
But
okay.
And this is where, like, this is one of the keys for people, is you need to have a vesting schedule. So the vesting schedule everybody in our company is on, including myself, is a 1-year cliff and a 4-year vest. So you essentially get a quarter of your stock at your 1-year mark, and then you invest monthly after that, all the way to 4 years. So because of that, we ended up in a situation where it was actually easier to offboard somebody that was a founder.
Okay.
That being said, I think that you have to be wise to the fact of, okay, let's say you start a company, you give them 30%, you part ways after 2 years, they end up with 15% of your company. What is that person on your cap table going to mean for your ability to fundraise later, if that's what you're trying to do? Sell the company later, right? Like, it becomes very operationally challenging.
Yes.
And I think that's still a perennial problem for us and a lot of other people who have had to part ways with the founder.
I've made that mistake in my career, where people walk away with a nice chunk, and meanwhile, 5 years later, after we've all kicked ass, they're still sitting on, these days I have some unique clauses that basically say, yeah, we have a so-called vesting schedule, but if you leave before we have a change in ownership, or before we sell, there's a clawback of some kind. Like, you're not gonna just come over here and help me for 2 years and walk away with 10% of the company. No.
And
anyway.
I think for the next company we do, that's going to be one of those essential mechanisms to have in place.
Yeah.
It's really tricky though, right? Because you don't start a company with anybody you want to walk away after 2 years.
That's true. Tell me about this. Well, two-part question. A, how did you personally survive at first when there wasn't enough money to pay you a full income? And it sounds like maybe your other guys were like, hey man, I got bills to pay, I got to go. How did you survive and make money? Were you kind of doing some stuff on the side to pay the bills? And then the second part of the question is, when you got this new founder, the guy with the PhD, did he invest, and did he bring cash? So two-part question.
Yeah. So we all at the beginning had other jobs, and I had another job until about 1.5 years ago. Right. Okay. So we've been in business for 5 years. And I think that's something that most people need to expect, that it's going to take you. And it depends on the type of company, right? If it's a local service business, you can probably get to a level of profitability faster, right? If you're an electrician or a plumber, or maybe you have a storefront and you're you're selling something out of that storefront. But for a high growth tech company, most people, it takes about 3 to 5 years to reach a pivot point where you're either enough revenue, you've been able to raise enough money to pay a salary.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, that was about 3.5 years in. So the expectation that I had was, well, I needed to hold down another job, and that job was going to have to support my lifestyle and the company while we really got the wheels going. And to be fair, when we first started the company, we were like, yeah, 6 months from now, we're going to have $500,000 in revenue. We're going to have raised $10 million. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Literally the day after we started the company, we were like, let's fundraise. I think these are things you learn the more entrepreneurial endeavors you have.
Mm-hmm.
When my current co-founder joined the company, he brought some money, right? We split the bills, if you will, but he himself, was not a major investor in the company.
Okay.
We actually got our first investment from a couple of accelerator programs.
Oh, good for you. Okay. How much cash have you raised? Can you share?
Yeah, so we just closed our seed actually about a month ago. So at this point, we've raised a million and a half dollars.
Good for you.
The
Great. Good for you. Good for you.
total, yeah.
Does Colby still have control of the cap table after this $1 million?
Yeah, so the new board member we brought on who has a board seat. He is fantastic. He and I get along well, right? I think people joke when you bring on an investor, it's actually like a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it truly is.
Or a divorce.
No. We're not getting there. So joke about joke in a honeymoon phase or not, but we knew each other for a few years before he decided
Okay.
through his venture firm to put money into the company.
All right.
So I still have a large equity stake in the company,
Okay.
but in terms of operational control, there are things that we both have to agree on in order to do, like raise more capital,
Okay.
right?
All right. All right. Very good. Well, nice job on the raise. Hey, listen, congrats on getting through the early changes. Well, you did a few things, right? First of all, you survived during those early years, having to work a double job and getting through all of the startup, and then you had to change co-founders, and then you eventually got some cash raised, and now and by the way, so post revenue, so to speak. Now, how big
Post
is it?
revenue,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
we
Are you? I don't know how much you want to share. Like, are you $1 million company? Are you $2 million? Where are you?
Yeah, well, it depends on how you value a software as a service company. We're doing quite well on revenue. We'll
Okay.
be about $500,000 in revenue at the end of this year.
Good for you. Are you burning cash right now, or are you clearing a profit each month?
No, so we'll be cash flow positive in about a year and a half, 2 years. That's the
Okay.
goal.
And you're still paying yourself for shit money right now, probably, barely.
Yeah, it was funny. The first year and a half, so considering we just closed our seed, so it's still an early round for us.
Okay.
The first year and a half that I was, full time in the company, I was paying myself out of my retirement account.
Yeah.
So even though I might be making less than I made in the public or private sector previously, I look at it like, well, at least I'm not. My 401k is not going to get any smaller.
The sacrifices of being an entrepreneur. I'm sure, Colby, there has to be, come on, share with the listeners now. There had to be those nights where you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I just want to go get a regular job.
There, my
Uh,
fiance has been my greatest support system, and I'm indebted to her. And there have been many, many nights. There was a time about 6 months ago, I called up at the time our lead investor from an accelerator program, and I said I'm quitting tomorrow. And he was like, "Wait, hold on. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so let's talk this out, buddy."
you're just like,
And there,
I can't.
yeah, there. I put myself into mental health counseling. Bought a meditation app. Just like there. Um,
That's so good. I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you
yeah.
keeping it real, Colby. Thank you so much. Everybody, all these guys, a lot of people come on the podcast and are like, oh, yeah, it went great. Yeah, we started the company and we raised cash and we were paying her, and then we had no problems. Like, come on, man. There's all kinds of nightmares and pains in there. Let's just talk about them.
It's a brutal journey. It's also ironically, if you have it, it's the most community driven journey, but at the same time, it's lonely,
Yeah, it's true.
right?
Good. Yep, I totally agree. Yeah, it is. There are people to talk to, but still, at the end of
Yeah.
the day, those people, you know why it's like that? Yeah, we all talk about our scars. We all sit around, we can go to the bar and be like, oh, look at scars on my back. Let's compare scars. Yeah, we've been through pains. But at the end of the day, you go home to your mortgage and your car payment, and none of those guys are helping you with that. So-
Nope. And
uh,
it's hard because I think most people in today's world try and measure their success economically, right? Not necessarily on what are they doing aligning with where they want to go, right? It's like how much am I making, right? And you're benchmarking yourself against your relatives, against your friends, uh, which is a really toxic way of trying to start a startup, right? And I think in the beginning, I fell into that trap because you're not going to make a lot of money in the beginning, if ever. Statistically, you are going to fail more often than not, and
yes.
sometimes that failure might mean the end of your journey.
Mm-hmm.
What matters most, like it's really though, granted, there are days that I'd curl up into a ball and I just am like, I'm going to stay here for about an hour, Steve. I'll like, I need a moment.
Yeah.
But on the average day, right? Would you rather wake up and do something else? And for me, the answer is absolutely not. I love what we do. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate our team and all the hard work and care they put in. If that answer for you though is honestly, I wish I was doing something else. And granted, I have been there on my hardest days. If that's sort of the overwhelming theme of your entrepreneurial journey, then maybe that's the sign that you need to
Yeah.
do something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm with you. So I've had Riderflex for about 9 years. And there's been lots of those nights, where you wake up in a sweat and walk around the living room at 3:30 in the morning, asking myself what the hell I'm doing. But
Got to make payroll next week, and you're like,
yeah, all
uh,
that. But I look back, I wouldn't change any of it. No, I would not. I wouldn't, because if I had done it differently and I had just kept my executive job, then I would be 57 years old, regretting that I never tried anything, right? And I wouldn't want that. I'm so glad that I've had the experience. It's been such a wonderful ride. Exciting, scary, fun, all of it. Like I wouldn't trade any of it. Trust me, I've done the math on could I have made a lot more money over the last 10 years as an executive instead of starting Riderflex? Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, it's not just about that for me. It's not about that for me. It's about the journey. And
absolutely.
one of the things I like the most, probably we could talk about all the rewards of being an entrepreneur, but one of the things that I really enjoy is if it's, let's say I've worked my ass off for 2 weeks or whatever, and put in a shit ton of hours, and then all of a sudden a Friday comes and it's going to be beautiful weather, and I want to just turn my laptop off and go up to the mountains in Colorado. I don't have to ask anybody.
Yep.
I I don't have to send my boss an email and say, "Hey, can I?" No. And that part I love, Colby.
Yeah, I think the flexibility is definitely something that attracts a lot of people. I joke, I'm the boss, right? Founder and CEO. We always joke, my fiance and I, like, oh, he's like, can we take a Friday off and go out of town? I'm like, let me ask the boss, right? Like, but the truth is, right? It's your company. Most founders work twice as hard as
Yeah,
people that
sure.
are
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
employed in a normal 9 to 5.
No doubt. Absolutely. Totally agree.
And so, you kind of get to balance that though with a little bit more flexibility. I'm going to
That's right.
work remote. I can
That's right.
work in a different time zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice trade-off.
It's a nice trade-off. So right now is probably a good segue. Let's talk. Let's give the listeners a little 3-minute elevator pitch here. It's refocusai.com.
Mhm.
Give it to us, Colby. Tell us about the company. Go for it.
Yeah, so ReFocus AI works with insurance agents, brokers, and carriers to proactively retain their customers. So what the heck does that mean? It means that we provide actionable insights. So the specific individuals, specific customers, as well as the context behind why someone is going to cancel before they do, so that our customers can proactively retain that. Um, and regardless of what business you're in, right? It's so much easier to keep an existing customer, whether you're a mechanic, whether you're a plumber, whether you're a software company, than it is to try and find a new customer out in the greater universe. And so that's ultimately where we come in. What our customers, though, and I think speaking specifically to insurance, they're interested in customer renewals, right? So that everybody listening to this call probably has insurance, and if not, you probably should go get some sort of insurance. It's actually the most expensive transaction in the insurance life cycle, renewing a customer. On average, it's over $140 about in time and effort to call someone up. Hey, Steve, your auto policy is renewing 30 days from now. Let's talk about it. Right. And so because of that, because of how time intensive and therefore expensive it is, it's really hard to do efficiently. And we make that process scalable. So that's a little bit about us.
Okay, so who's your target? Is your target like the Allstate agent or independent? Like who are you targeting?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we sell directly to the individual or the organization that owns the customer relationship. The reason I say that is like an independent agent owns the relationship, whereas the carrier who has your policy from that independent agent wouldn't necessarily feel like they own it. Now, there are companies, insurance companies out there like Geico that own the relationship, and therefore they could be a customer for us. Right now, though, we're seeing a lot of traction in the agent space.
In the agent space. Okay. Any specific type of insurance that you hit or
Well, if you really want to bore the listeners, no. So we're in the property and casualty space.
I see.
We don't really do life or health at the moment.
Why is that?
Life and health have different dynamics around customer acquisition and retention. So, I mean, when do you purchase health insurance, Steve?
Where, when, or
When?
when? I don't know. I've had it since I was a kid or a young man, I guess. I don't know.
Open enrollment normally,
Oh,
right? So
sorry. I got now. I see. Sorry,
yeah.
I'm being stupid.
No,
Right.
it's get into insurance, Steve. No,
Yeah,
and this
yeah.
is get into insurance. So yeah, that's right. Most people purchase it around open enrollment.
I see.
Most people get it through their companies. So you're not necessarily going to have an account leave. You're going to have an entire company go somewhere else in November,
Uh,
right? And so it's just a different dynamic where,
I see.
auto, you have a bunch of customers renewing all year round. It's not tied to an event or another
Okay.
organization that
Okay.
employs
Okay.
you.
Okay. Okay. Very good. All right. And how many agents or customers do you have now? Thousands?
No, so we have 10 very large organizations on the platform.
Okay.
And we decided to start small and grow from there.
Do you have a lot of competition for this deal, or is this proprietary, super secret, patented SaaS product?
If anybody says they have no competition, I'm worried because everybody has to have a competition. There are a couple software companies out there that are in a similar space, but they're they're fundamentally approaching the problem differently. I like to say that our competition is primarily the status quo, right? So when we talk to an insurance agent that's been in business for 20 years and
I
they're so
see.
profitable, they're going
I see.
golfing every week,
I see.
right?
He's like, I don't need. He's like, I don't need it. He's like, I don't need it.
Yeah, I've been super profitable for 20 years. How are you going to make it better for me?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so status quo is our true competition.
How are you getting these new clients? Who's knocking on those doors?
Yeah, so we have a wonderful sales team. But one of the pivots we've made is to an alliance model where we sell to organizations that have many members. And
Mm,
then that gives us a one-to-many touch point, right? Because if we become a partner with an organization with 1,000 of our potential customers, I don't now need to call 1,000 customers. That organization is doing a lot of the work for us. And through that partnership, we're mutually generating value.
can you define organization? Like what? Like a regional all-state team? What do you mean?
Yeah, so in our industry, there's every state has an insurance agent association of that state.
Okay,
There's other organizations that are national in the US that focus on technology in the space,
I see.
right? And they have hundreds, if not thousands, of members themselves
Okay.
that are also potential customers for us.
All right, very good. What's your plan? Who's going to buy this thing from you? What's the exit strategy?
We're really at the moment focused on getting to profitability in about 2 years. And I think
Okay.
that presents a really interesting opportunity to either continue to grow and expand to other verticals outside of insurance,
Mhm.
telecommunications potentially being one. Keep your ears out for that. Um, or sell. There's lots of companies in the space that might buy us at the acquisition price that we're targeting. We'll
Okay.
see.
All right. All right, very good. Refocusai.com. Anything else you want to share as far as contact information or how people should get a hold of you guys or anything like that? Anything else you want to chat about there?
Yeah, well, my direct contact information's on the screen next to me. If anybody is listening to
Okay.
this and wants to learn more, they can reach out, Colby at refocusai.com, or reach out to the website. It's always great to hear from people.
You can also, I don't know if you take new connections on LinkedIn, but Colby Tunick, founder and CEO at Refocus AI San Diego on LinkedIn, if you want to connect with him there. Uh,
Please do.
all right, let me ask you a last question here before we hang up. Last topic. You said your new co-founder is a PhD in AI.
Mhm.
Okay. We could do a whole show on it. We could do a whole podcast on AI, bet, right? Based on everything that's going on.
We sure could.
Well, first of all, how old is his doctorate? Because I think that really sets the stage for my questioning, right? Like if you got a doctorate in AI 15 years ago, I mean, gosh, it's just so different from now. I don't know what's his status there.
Yeah, so he got his doctorate in the 90s, but he's worked in the journey since with top Fortune 50s, solving all sorts of problems from customer retention to fraud to marketing optimization to price elasticity.
All right. All
Yeah,
right. Well, all right. What's his view? Does he think robots and AI agents are going to do everything, and we're all going to be on universal basic income and not have jobs, or what? What? What?
no. So I think the term of average general intelligence or AGI is take a step back. So machine learning has been around since the 50s, right?
Yep.
AI has been around since the 50s. There's been two limiting factors. One is the compute power necessary to build ever larger models. The second is data that's uniform enough to build advanced insights, right? Now, the interesting thing is we're sort of at that place again. And every time we hit the wall, it's called an AI winter. That's actually the terminology in the industry. So there was one in the 90s, there was one in the 2000s, one like 2014, and now we're sort of about to reach that next one where we sort of exceeded either our compute power or available data necessary, right? And so there's three or four large companies in the space that are doing this sort of AGI, large language model work. They have essentially scraped all available data from the internet. Like there's no new data available, right? Uh, so what happens when there's no new data available? There's a really strong argument to be made that we're not going to get much smarter then, are we? There's also an argument to be made that these models are not actually rationalizing. They've by consuming that large amount of data, they have seen in the past a couple of examples of the question you're trying to answer. Right? There's it's a really fun you can prompt you can try, and it's how many R's are in strawberry. Right? You type that into any general model, it's going to tell you there's 2 R's when there's 3. Right? And you can clearly spell it out and you're like, well, how is this happening? It's because it's not actually reasoning, right? And the way these models work is it doesn't know the answer until it's produced it. So like when you fundamentally understand how these models are producing the results they're
Mhm.
great for many things, but they're not capable of that general yet, and might not be able to for the foreseeable future. That putting you on universal basic income.
Okay. All right. So you think you think we'll be fine. The Terminator is not coming. You think everything's going to be fine?
Well, you could build a Terminator today, and they have connected large language models to, defense-based robotics. But that being said, it's not like it's it's not actually reasoning, right? It's not sentient. It's not
Okay.
consuming the context, making a unique decision. It's only looking at the data that it was trained on and then approximating based on that data what it thinks the outcome should be,
I
right?
got you. I got you.
It's
I got you.
it's different.
Okay. Okay. Will there be humanoid robots in every household in the next 5 or 10 years to do chores?
So ironically, that's probably a more, to me, that's a more interesting question. The problem with robotics has traditionally been the ability to grasp unique objects, so dexterity, right? So like the right force to apply,
Yeah.
like for a tomato versus a brick.
Hmm.
There's been a ton of advances there, but in terms of like being in every house in the next decade, I think we really need to understand like what is the utility of having a robot in every house in the next decade. And can you imagine how much it's going to hurt when one of those things steps on your bare foot? Like,
Yeah, safety is a big one. Safety is a big one, yeah, I totally agree. Well, we're living in a fascinating time, my friend. Fascinating world, aren't we?
you know, uh, the amount of novelty in the last decade is unparalleled in human history, just like the amount of compute power for space on a microchip keeps,
Yes.
increasing.
Yes.
Um, I saw something like it took 1,000 years to invent candles. It took hundreds of years to invent, the electrical light it takes. It took 20 years or 30 years to invent an LED. Like it's just the pace of innovation is rapidly modernizing.
It's
So
crazy.
it'll be an interesting few decades, and we need to have smart policy to make sure that we're we're thinking through and managing this risk and change well.
That's a good way to end it. However, you just open up a whole nother can of worms with the regulation and the policy and the rules around. So we could do a whole nother show on that topic, but we're out of time. All right, my friend Colby, thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast. Congratulations on everything you guys are doing. I mean, really, at ReFocus AI, congrats. You're a hustler, my friend, and I admire that.
Thank you so much. It was great being on your podcast, Steve.